911 dispatchers of Reddit. What are some of the dumbest calls you've gotten? Guy gets his truck stuck in the mud while out doing donuts at 3 AM and calls for help. Tell him he needs to pay a tow truck to winch him out. Guy gets angry and claims we are leaving him stranded in the dark. Spooky. Tell him we can send an officer out to check on him if the area isn't safe. You all got me fricked up. I'm on probation and you trying to send me back to jail. Tow truck arrives and while trying to winch him out, Guy keeps taking off his clothes and trying to frick his girlfriend in the backseat of the truck the driver is working on. Tow driver leaves. Guy calls back and is now very angry that tow driver didn't give his girlfriend a ride home, since he's gonna fight the cops when they show up. Additional officers were sent. I had a woman call 911 to ask if it was legal to sell a baby. I had a guy call to report information on a drug dealer because the dealer had sold him M instead of coke. The guy said this was an ongoing issue and he had finally had enough. The first one is sad, but the second one is sad that people are that dumb. 3 AM. Got a call about a suspicious vehicle outside of her house. I start getting the description and get my officers en route. When she says they're leaving, I get the direction they are headed and relay it. I've got 4 officers converging like a net on this guy. Now that I've got a moment, I ask the woman, what exactly did they do? She replies, they just stopped at the stop sign for a moment and then they moved on. Imagine driving home from work and suddenly seeing 4 officers chasing after you. Repo companies in the area report their repos to us, just in case the owner decides to try and report the car stolen. I started my shift that day logging several. When one of the owners calls in, we take his info, confirm it matches, and let him know it was reported as repossessed and to contact his finance company. A little while later, he calls 911 again to let us know that he paid it up to date and the address they gave him to pick up the car didn't exist, so he wanted to report it stolen. We again refer him to his finance company. A few hours later, he called 911 again. He checked his onboard GPS signal and saw it listed his car in another city, the next state over, so he had driven there and searched the city, but didn't find it, so it had to be stolen. We again explain it was repoed and to continue speaking with his financial institution. The day carries on, and we eventually get to the end of the shift. As we are wrapping everything up for our shift up before night shift gets in, he calls 911 again. He found the tow yard his car was stored at, but it was closed for the night. He needed us to open it for him so he could claim his car. We explained that it was a private business and the car wasn't stolen, so we can't just bust in and take his car. He will have to claim the car once they are open in the morning. He was so moved by our logic that he decided to try reporting it as stolen again. Some lady wanted the fire department to come burn her house down because she thought a demon lived in it. I sent paramedics and police to check on her, but I told her we'd be happy to burn her house down in a controlled training capacity if she wanted to donate it, but there was a lot of paperwork to get that started. I suspect her neighbors may have issues with this plan. Also, I'm super drunk and I got run over by a sled. Now in northern Alberta typically this would mean a snowmobile and potentially life-threatening injuries. No, his kid hit his ankle bone with a wooden toboggan. Didn't even have a bruise. Down south where I am living now, a toboggan is a winter hat. As a northerner, I spent a good while being horribly confused. This information makes this story slightly funnier. My husband used to dispatch before he was old enough to go to the police academy. We lived in a small town, ranked 3rd most dangerous in our state. Lots and lots of drug use. There was a woman who was honestly crazy. I don't know if she had mental problems before the drugs or if the drugs fried her brain, but she was a regular caller. Some of her calls she called and said that she was violated. After coaxing some info out of her, she said she knew who did it. It was her stuffed bear. Another time she called to report a break-in because she fell asleep with her blanket wrapped around her, but when she woke up it was bundled at her feet. She called one summer night, routinely got over 115 degrees in the summer, and said that she had walked 3 miles from her apartment and needed a ride back because she was barefoot and her feet hurt. He asked her where her shoes were and she said she was carrying them. She walked 3 miles and didn't think to put them on. Another call wasn't stupid but still stuck with me. It was a domestic violence call, and when he asked what was going on, the woman yelled he threw a piping hot chicken pot pie at me. Something about her attention to detail I just thought was funny in an unfunny situation. I cannot imagine the level of anger that would push someone to ruin a perfectly good chicken pot pie. Middle of night shift. Get a report of a guy trying to ride on a moose. Officer attends. There is indeed a male trying to ride said moose. Male is wearing a high-vis vest and a helmet, which his girlfriend made him put on. For safety reasons, of course. 1. Every Thanksgiving you'll always get the person who calls because they don't know how long to cook a turkey. Never fails. 2. Every Thanksgiving someone always puts a frozen turkey in a deep fryer, usually in a trailer home, and a fire surprisingly occurs. 3. People who have warrants on themselves love calling to complain and ask to see the police in person for a dispute. They don't seem to remember we look up everyone in the dispute, not just the accused. Yesterday morning was a cold one in my area. Icy conditions on the roads, widespread crashes, all the good stuff. Lady calls in and complains about a suspicious substance on the road that made her car slip. She was driving too fast to see what it was but insisted that something strange was afoot. I had a lady call for a suspicious box she saw. She said she couldn't get a good description of it because she was driving by so fast. It was a speed trap. Once my dad got a call from the 911 dispatch. At first he was really confused because he didn't call them in the first place. They asked, "So do you have a daughter?" "Yes." "Why?" "Well, she just called and claimed you broke her heart." Apparently my sister got in trouble when she was about 5 or 6 and called 911 claiming my daddy broke my heart. She hung up in embarrassment after the dispatcher began laughing. I've been a dispatcher for about 7 years now in a medium-sized county in Florida. Every year on the 4th of July and New Year's we get calls about gunshots. Every single time the caller is perfectly convinced they're gunshots and couldn't possibly be fireworks. They'll say they hear automatic weapons, or my personal favorite rapid-fire shotguns. And every single time a deputy goes out to investigate, it turns out to be the unlikely culprit of fireworks. I had one woman call 911 to tell me she found a cell phone on the ground. That's it. Irate elderly male calls 911 while standing in the sheriff's office lobby to report the clerk not being helpful. When I told him that's not something you use a 911 line for, he went ape crap, going as far as threatening to break into the office and shoot me. He was subsequently arrested. Male was arrested for domestic battery, called 911 from the backseat of the patrol car and stated he was being unlawfully imprisoned. When I told him the only thing I could do for him was to send him more deputies, he said, "No thanks," and hung up. He then proceeded to call 3 more times looking for a different answer. We told the deputies on scene. They took his phone away and added a charge of misuse of 911. Had a woman call in stating she accidentally took too much melatonin. She started getting hysterical when she felt the effects of her overdose. She was getting sleepy. Sounds like shooting someone while fireworks go off nearby is the perfect way to get away with murder. A lady ran over herself with her own car. She called to let us know she was okay. This was fall of 2012. Hope she's up, still doing okay. For those wondering, this was in CA. The lady was calm, laughed nervously, embarrassed a couple times, absolutely refused any type of response, even inquired from the FD, and didn't say how it happened. We took down her info, gave the typical safety admonishment, told her to call back if she needed to. I hope she's doing well, too, but a part of me knows she probably isn't. Around 3 AM, me, County 911. "Do you need police, fire, or medical?" Caller: "Nope. I'm calling to report there is no emergency." Me: "Okay, you don't need any assistance?" Caller: "No sir, everything is good here." Me: "Okay, well you called an emergen." Caller: click. "Well I guess I'll go frick myself then. Thanks bud." Sounds like he thought someone else called 911 and was trying to stop the police from coming. I bet there's a body buried in his garden. 2-minute account. If I had to pick a favorite, I'd have to choose the time a concerned citizen called in an animal stuck in a tree. That animal was a bird. Me. 911, what's your emergency? Caller. There is a horse laying down in a field. Me. Do you believe it is injured? Caller. No, it just normally stands up. Me. Yeah, we will have a deputy go look at it. And yes, the horse was okay. My mom was a dispatcher in Arizona after college back in the 70s and told me a great story about a call she got, or rather a series of calls from an Indian man. Indian, not Native American. I can't recall what the original distress call was about, but after that first call, he started calling back all the time because he thought she had a hot voice. She told me he would turn the charm level up to 11, trying to woo her in his thick Indian accent. Apparently as soon as she would answer the call, his opening line was "Hello control, I love you," and she'd have to hold back her laughter. Okay, so I talked to her this morning. My recollection was close enough, and she did give me one more story, more twisted, differently funny. So she gets a call from a payphone. Guy is slurring his words, but she makes out something that sounds like "I cut off my dong." So to be safe, she sends out an ambulance to the location of the payphone and relays what she thinks happened. When they arrive on scene, EMT picks up the phone, still off the hook, and tells her that yes, the dude is sitting in a pile of blood with his dong in hand, separated from his body. EMT just says yep, he cut it off, and ends the call to tend to the man's self-inflicted wounds. Turns out he was a depressed veteran who wanted to be a woman, and took matters into his own hands. I'm not a 911 dispatcher, but I'm a central station operator. I'm the lady that asks what your password is when your alarm goes off. Been at my job 5 years. My favorite call ever was the second call I made to the house of an old couple. Their alarm had gone off about 30 minutes prior. They weren't sure why the alarm was sounding, so they asked me for the police to be dispatched. On the second call, the wife answered the phone, gave me all the correct information, and then passed the phone to the officer. The alarm was still sounding, but there was another weird beep in the background. We walked the owners through shutting their system off, but this beep was still going off. The officer was getting frustrated and the homeowners weren't sure why the alarm is still sounding, so they wanted me to shut the alarm down. I told him that our system was shut off and the beeping wasn't from us. The officer then went looking for the sound. He found out it was their alarm clock sounding. I swear I heard him roll his eyes through the phone, and I tried my best not to laugh. He handed the phone back to the older couple, who still had no idea what was going on but said the officer told them everything was okay. TLDR. Old couple has asked dispatch PD because of strange beeping noise. Officer arrives to find out it was their alarm clock. My sister is a paramedic in a country with free ambulance care for concession seniors. Some days half her call-outs are old people who stubbed their toe. Got a call from a woman in the wee hours of the morning, clearly drunk and slurring. She says, "I want you to send an cipher to my house and take me to the bar. Wait while I get drunk, and then take me home." Me. "Mom, I think you are looking for a taxi service." Her. "Well, you guys suspended my license. Time passes." Her. "Okay, I'm ready. Come and get me." Me. "Mom, I already told you, we are not a taxi." Her. "I got warrants." Me. "Oh, well, in that case, they said she fought like a prize fighter." "It's me, the police. Will your Uber tonight? Straight to county jail. Don't forget to tip." Tridge nurse in Australia. We commonly get old people complaining of chest pain and on the ambulance, only for it to miraculously disappear. They use it as a taxi into town. Last year I reported one guy that had done it 5 times in 2 weeks, and a month later he showed up in a taxi with a snake bite. They had stopped at a drive-through alcohol shop on the way. Regular caller. Lady used to call all the time, convinced that her ex-husband was stalking her and secretly living on her second floor. The second floor of her 3-room trailer home. Also had another regular caller. Woman kept seeing ninjas in her trees. Pointed to one once, telling the officer, "Look, can you see their glowing eyes?" I called 911 about a dozen times to report people on my porch. Turns out ambien is just a terrible sleep med. We have a call that every new trainee at my county listens to during training, because it highlights how completely oblivious our callers can truly be. A neighbor enters her friend's house because she's not answering the door. She finds the patient on the couch sleeping. She calls 911 because she's not waking up. She says she's not moving, not answering me or waking up. It looks like she has been cooking with blueberries. Her hands are all blue. Operator already knows that means she's dead. We send everyone out. Ems arrives on scene first and immediately backs out. According to the deputy that arrived right after, she had a gun in hand, shot herself in the head and it splattered all over the wall behind her. Our caller never even noticed. Caller calls for an ambulance. Female patient, difficulty breathing. Ambulance arrives on scene and starts screaming for the fire department. Turns out the lady was having difficulty breathing from all the smoke in the burning house. Caller never thought to mention it. I work overnights on the weekends and usually get the drunkies. A lady called you to being in a fight with her cat. The cat kicked her. A man called from outside the bar demanding I send a fire truck to help him look for his glasses that he dropped. The man had the same name as a famous musician. So when I dispatched it as is intoxicated in the middle of the road requesting that personnel assist him with locating his eyeglasses, my officer thought I was fricking with him. Not a call. But, two super hillbilly guys come in with a Walmart sack. One of them holds it up and shakes it at me and flatly says I found a dead cat. He opened it to confirm that there was in fact a cat, not moving, with all four paws in the air. I'm stunned at first. I couldn't tell if they were serious. He wanted me to take it. I had to tell them it's midnight. I'm a dispatcher and not a vet, and there's really nothing I can do about a dead cat you found on the road. He shakes the bag again and there was a loud meow. Cat tears out of the sack and just unleashes on this guy. He's screaming Junior, Junior help Emmy and crying. And this cat is just clawing everywhere he can reach. They get the cat calmed down and ended up leaving with it. I look around at the blood on the floor, not sure if it was his or the cat's, but I was just like, what the frick just happened? I can't stop laughing about the cat. Kind of relevant. Worked in the Coast Guard where one of my jobs was the same thing as a dispatcher with radios and phones and boats instead of cars to respond. One day someone called me to tell me their young daughter was just kidnapped. I asked them if the kidnapper was on a boat or near the water. They said no. The caller just didn't think it was a big enough issue to call 911, so they called the Coast Guard instead. For people asking for an update, I unfortunately do not have one. I was worried about getting them to the right resource quickly, so I took some of the caller's basic info and told them to hang up with me and call 911. I also called 911 and passed along the information just in case. I looked for a news article that was similar to the caller's story for weeks, but never found one. I really hope that means that it was a stupid hoax call or the girl was found very quickly. What? Let's not waste police time and resources on this. Let's call the military instead. My favorite was one taken by a coworker. She had a guy who called to report hearing gunshots. He was the kind of pompous butt who insisted he could tell her the caliber of the gun from the sound of the shots. The officers were checking the area, and he called back. What he insisted was a certain caliber gunshot was actually a can of Coke exploding in his freezer. My most recent was a lady today who kept calling because she wanted to complain about her husband having their children. They are going through a divorce, but still legally married. In our state that means they have equal custody rights. She just kept telling me that he wasn't a US citizen, and she didn't like it when I told her that didn't matter. She actually asked me to send somebody to deport him. I politely declined that. I've had one similar to the second. Wanted us to come and take the children away from the father. Wasn't happy when I explained that we can't just kidnap children from their parents. Relaying these two stories from my mother who worked 911 for 20 years. 1. People are xenophobic buttholes. A woman called in, panicking and upset, wanting an officer to come out to some shopping center where a dentist office was. My mum asks her what's going on. Why does she need help? And this woman suddenly starts to whisper, I saw a black man walk up to the door of the doctor, such and pull on the door. Well, maybe there's more to it, so mum asks follow-up questions like, can you still see the man? If so, what is he doing? And this woman gets standoffish and says he tried the door then walked down the sidewalk. I think he might come back. My mother tries again asking for more info like maybe this idiot woman saw something incriminating to necessitate a police response. Number. Instead she gets PR'd my mother and restates, I told you he was black. Mum enjoyed harshly reminding her that having a dark skin color is not freaking illegal. What she believes happened was a man came up to the dentist's office, didn't notice the hours, tried the door, and when it didn't work, fricked off back home wherever, like a normal person. 2. People are stupid. The second one is actually funny. So Friday night comes and mum gets a call. The man on the other end of the phone is ridiculously drunk and asks if she knows the number of Pizza Hut. They're not super busy, so she says she'll give it to him this one time but to never call back on the 911 line for this again. They think all is good and make fun of him for the rest of the night shift. Until next week. Friday rolls around and drunk McDo has looked up the non-911 number and asks, again, for the number to Pizza Hut because he lost it while he was drunk on Saturday. Her partner at work gives it to him and warns him not to call in again asking for Pizza Hut because they are not the dang operators. The next week, Friday rolls around and he calls again. And only this time does a friendly officer go down to his address to remind him not to call them for Pizza Hut. No word on if he was given the number again by the officer. One extra. The dumbest but real problem she was ever called in for was a semi-truck tire rolling down Main Street and endangering traffic. They weren't the brightest and apparently the responding officer blue lighted the tire. They heard the sirens through the radio and asked him if he planned on pulling the tire over. After chasing it to a roundabout, it finally fell over. But the idea of them chasing a truck tire in a police car has made me laugh for 15 years. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.